Barry and Honey Sherman were discovered dead in the basement pool room of their Toronto mansion on December 15, 2017. Their real estate agent had arrived to prepare the home for a showing. It had recently been listed for sale. She entered with a key and walked into the lower-level indoor pool area, where she found both bodies in an upright, seated position side by side, with their backs against a metal railing. They were fully clothed. Leather belts were looped around their necks and tied to the railing, and their coats were pulled behind their backs, partially restraining their arms. It was an eerie and methodical scene that immediately set off alarms, but despite the gruesome discovery, initial police statements left more questions than answers. Barry Sherman, 75, was the founder of Apotex, a pharmaceutical empire built on his fierce legal battles to push generic drugs into the Canadian and global markets. He was a billionaire, known equally for his philanthropy and his tenacity. Honey Sherman, 70, was a prominent member of Toronto's charitable and social elite. She was beloved in many circles, known for her generosity, warmth, and no-nonsense personality. Together, the couple had donated tens of millions of dollars to hospitals, universities, and Jewish organizations. They had 4 adult children, Jonathan, Lauren, Alexandra, and Kaylin, each of whom had grown up in privilege, but reportedly under strict discipline and high expectations. Despite the disturbing circumstances in which the Shermans were found, Toronto police initially floated the theory of a murder-suicide, suggesting Barry may have killed Honey and then himself. That conclusion sparked outrage from family members and close friends who insisted there was no history of violence, depression, or marital strife. Within days, the Sherman family hired their own private investigative team, including forensic pathologists, former homicide detectives, and security experts. They commissioned an independent autopsy, which found both Barry and Honey had died from ligature neck compression, likely caused by the belts tied around their necks. The findings showed signs of blunt force trauma and revealed that the positioning of the bodies appeared staged. Barry had been seated in a more tidy manner, while Honey's position and injuries suggested she may have died first. After 6 weeks of mounting pressure and media scrutiny, Toronto police finally reversed their stance and officially declared the case a double homicide. What followed was one of the most expensive and complicated murder investigations in Canadian history. Over the next several years, detectives executed multiple search warrants, reviewed security footage from the neighborhood, sifted through millions of electronic files, and conducted more than 250 interviews. Still, no suspect was named, no arrests were made, and very few details were shared publicly. Investigators turned their attention to the Sherman family, a common practice in cases involving no forced entry and significant inheritance. The 4 Sherman children were all interviewed by police and private investigators. The most visible of the siblings was Jonathan Sherman, the eldest, who publicly pushed back on the early murder-suicide theory and later offered a $10 million reward for information. Despite wild rumors, no family members were ever declared suspects. However, internal family dynamics were known to be complicated. Barry Sherman was reportedly planning changes to his will shortly before his death, changes that might have impacted the children's inheritance. Though these financial moves were never proven to be linked to the murders, they deepened public curiosity about possible motives within the family. Investigators also looked into Barry's vast web of business dealings. As the head of Apotex, Barry had been embroiled in more than 50 lawsuits at the time of his death. He had made powerful enemies in the pharmaceutical world, particularly among companies whose patents he had challenged. His courtroom tactics had often been aggressive and unforgiving. One major lawsuit had just been resolved in his favor, brought by his own cousins, who alleged they were owed a piece of the Apotex fortune. Barry won the case shortly before he died, but lingering resentment remained among those who believed he had wronged them. Police also scrutinized former employees of Apotex, some of whom had been terminated after internal disputes. The company had a history of corporate litigation and regulatory conflict, including raids and allegations of misconduct. While no specific rival or executive was ever publicly linked to the crime, the breadth of Barry's enemies meant investigators had to sift through a long list of possible grudges, personal, financial, and professional. Despite this, police never identified any credible leads tying a business rival to the murders. Attention then shifted to the home itself. There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared to be stolen. The Shermans' home was undergoing renovations, and contractors, realtors, and potential buyers had access in the weeks before the murders. This raised the possibility that someone familiar with the home, or with inside knowledge of its layout and security, was involved. Police interviewed housekeepers, construction crews, real estate agents, and tradespeople, but no strong leads emerged. The killer may have known when the Shermans would be home and how to avoid triggering suspicion or alarms. The theory that the killer had a key or entered through an unlocked door remained plausible, especially since the home was being shown to potential buyers. The most significant development came in December 2021, 4 years after the murders. Toronto police released grainy surveillance footage showing a mysterious man walking near the Sherman residence around the estimated time of death. The man's identity was unknown, and his gait was described as unusual. He appeared to deliberately avoid security cameras, walking alone in the snow slowly and methodically. Police labeled him a suspect, not merely a person of interest, and asked for public assistance in identifying him. Despite the release of the footage and wide media circulation, the man was never named, and no updates followed. It became the closest thing the public had to a visual suspect. Over the years, theories about the murders have varied widely. Some investigators believe the killings were personal, possibly a vendetta, due to the staged positioning of the bodies. Others believe it was a targeted contract killing, carried out by a professional with intimate knowledge of the couple and their routines. Some suspect a family or internal betrayal, while others lean toward a high-level corporate conspiracy. Still, despite the size of the reward, international attention, and extensive investigation, no one has ever been arrested. As of 2025, the murder of Barry and Honey Sherman remains unsolved. The case is still active, and the Toronto police say they continue to follow up on leads. The $10 million reward offered by the Sherman family remains on the table, but the silence has been deafening. With no motive conclusively proven and no suspect in custody, the deaths of Barry and Honey Sherman remain one of Canada's most confounding and high-profile mysteries, leaving behind a trail of legal documents, whispered speculation, and unanswered questions buried deep within the billion-dollar world they once ruled.